Hey, Nicole here. I am at a corporate event tonight. We are set up in like the parking lot of a church, but it's not for a church, it's for a company that rented out the church, if that makes sense. But I'm not going to lie, I'm a little nervous about tonight. It'll be my first time that I'm ever unplugged. I will not have an outlet. And so I have an Anchor battery that I've been like testing around and messing with to see if it will work. And so tonight is it, but I'm excited. All right, so I'll bring you guys along and I'll show you kind of my setup and maybe behind the scenes, and then I'll recap with you after. All right, I'll load it up. I'm going over there.
It was at this moment that he knew.
Okay, so now we check camera settings and exposure and make sure everything looks good. Did we learn some lessons or did we learn some lessons? I wanted to share that with you guys, honestly, because it doesn't matter how long you've been in this business. Granted, I haven't even been in this business for very long at all. I'm learning as you're learning, honestly. But it just goes to show, like, even if you know what the right thing to do is, sometimes you just don't do it and then you'll learn. Thankfully, it didn't cost me anything. I didn't lose any time. I didn't ruin or damage anything. But I think what was so hilarious and also annoying about that whole situation was that I knew better. I have all of the weights in my car. I have the sandbags in my car, and it just didn't go the way I thought. I don't know what I was thinking. Lesson learned. A couple lessons here that I did want to share with you. Lesson number one. So part of my contract stipulates that if I'm outdoors, I have to be under a covering, an awning, something like that, so that my equipment is protected. I don't want to expose my equipment to the elements. I'm in Florida. Florida's crazy sometimes, and there's random showers. It's always important to protect my gear at all costs, especially for a printing event. As you know, or if you don't know, printers are really rare right now. They're really difficult to find, and so messing up my printer would be a really bad day. Number one, if you're outside, make sure you make preparations for that, meaning that you're under a tent or covering. And another thing I always ask about is power, electricity. And then another thing I ask about is Wi-Fi. So in my client communication, I ask specifically about cover, about electricity, and about Wi-Fi. They asked me if I could provide power for myself, that there wasn't power available, and if I could accommodate that. I did know that you could power the salsa photo booth without being directly connected to an outlet. So I knew it was possible, and so I wanted this gig, and so I said yes, I would make it happen. It would be this, charge to add on a power bank or generator or something like that. I was originally planning on renting one from Home Depot because you can rent them for like $30, $40, which is way better than spending like $500 to $1,000 for like a Jackery or something like that. But I kept checking for availability for this specific one that I wanted, and they were unavailable. I don't know if it was because of the hurricanes recently, or if they just all sold out, or what the deal was. So I ended up going with Photo Booth Supply Co's recommendation of the Anchor battery, and I'll link it down below because as you can see in the video, like, it worked flawlessly. I had 48% left on the battery, and it charged my booth, my printer, and my Wi-Fi. Circling back to my requirements, it was a cover, and it was power, and then it was Wi-Fi. They said that they didn't have Wi-Fi, and I said no problem, I'll bring a hotspot. I do have 2 hotspots with 2 different providers, AT&T and Verizon, and so I told them, yeah, that's not a problem, we'll add that on as well. And then he said he would provide the tent, so I was like, fantastic, great. I did not take into account the height of the tent. And so when I arrived, it was clear that it was not going to be tall enough. It was probably 6 feet, maybe a little bit higher. No, I think it was 6 feet. Like, at least the lip of the tent hit at about 6 feet. Where my assumption is, because I didn't ask specifically, was the 10-foot tall tents, which was not the case. Well, that was my bad. I should have clarified and asked about the tent height. And so that was something I had to roll with when I got there because there was just no other option. I was already there. Another thing that wasn't there were sandbags for the tent. So it of course is on a parking lot, and so the poles had nowhere to go, and they didn't provide sandbags. So I ended up having extra in my car, so I was able to put some on 2 opposing sides of the tent so it didn't, pick up wind and fly away. What I ended up doing, as you saw, was I put the backdrop behind kind of the tent, and that way at least I could keep my booth, the printer, underneath the covering. But then, of course, as you saw, the wind, as soon as I put it up, the wind knocked it down immediately, which is another thing to consider if you were outdoors. You definitely want a backdrop that has some sort of breathability to it, like the sequin, like a hedge, flower wall, any kind of those that do have some sort of like breathability to it. Because anything like the pillow top backdrop are literally going to be like a kite. Like, they're going to fly away, and you're going to snap your frame. It's going to be very, very difficult to kind of keep that stable because it's a solid, it's a solid thing. So fortunately, there was some breathability for my backdrop. I still had to clamp it on several sides, and it's still, like you could see, it was like stretched out a little bit. I have base plates, like base plate weights. They didn't fit perfectly, the base plate that I have for this. It's actually made from my pipe and drape setup that I have. So it fits that perfectly. This, it doesn't really fit perfectly because of my little screws at the bottom. But it still worked to kind of keep it in place and keep it weighted down. There's a lot of additional things to consider if you're doing outdoor events. And in hindsight, I think I'm going to charge more because it's a lot more work to prep a photo booth experience outdoors than it is in an indoor event. And you have to have a lot more supplies, clamps, weights, tent, power, hotspot. All of those things really should have been charged extra. I did charge the client extra for some of those things, but not all of them. But it's fine. It's a learning experience, and I'm definitely leaving now considering in my head, okay, next time I have an outdoor event, these are the things that I'm requiring. And oh man, I have one of my like funniest stories and worst experience stories with a photo booth is with an outdoor event, but that's a story for another time. As a final rundown, the things that you need for an outdoor event 100% are going to be a covering for your booth and your printer so you can keep your equipment safe. If you don't have that, make sure you have some sort of tarp on the ready that you can throw over your equipment should you need to, should there be sudden rain, and have a kind of action plan already in your head of what you're going to do if that were to happen to you. Second thing would be your backdrop, making sure it's breathable, making sure it's not going to cause issues with any bit of gust of wind. Third would be base plate weights or several sandbags, whatever you need to do to keep your stand upright and not fall on your equipment, on clients, on you. Create a safe environment, and that means weighting it down as much as possible. It also means clamps. You need clamps to be able to clamp down your backdrop. And then power. If you are not able to get access to power, or you show up and you find out you're too far from power, you don't have an extension cord that runs long enough, etc., etc. I am so glad I have this power bank now, because I know it'll work this event. From the time I set it up to the time that it ended, it was 3 hours. So 48% for 3 hours, that was really great. And over 150 captures, I believe, in that amount of time. So it wasn't too busy, but still, like, I felt like really, really great return on my investment for that little power bank. And then lastly, hotspot. So if you're doing an outdoor event and part of it is sending out texts or emails with whatever software you have, you're gonna need Wi-Fi. If this is your first time going to a venue, honestly, like, best practice would be to go and test the internet if you can. If you can't, I would always suggest bringing a backup option. I'm very grateful I have 2 different hotspots, because I can't tell you the amount of times that I've shown up and reception is awful on one hotspot and then perfect on another. I would say I use both of my hotspots pretty evenly, but I default to my AT&T more. Just definitely recommend hotspot. You don't necessarily have to have both, but at least have one backup in case Wi-Fi fails. Especially if you're only doing digital photo booths and the client is expecting digital sharing immediately. That would really be unfortunate if you showed up and Wi-Fi didn't work. That actually happened to me this past weekend. I was at an event that was a digital only photo booth, and it was a hotel, and there was no reception on either of my hotspots, but I was able to connect to the Wi-Fi at the venue. So there's like plan B, plan C, but I'm very grateful for all of my backups. I definitely recommend backups. As much as you can afford, as much as you can get, for sure, get some backups. All right, so I hope that was helpful. I'll have links for everything down below for you. If you're interested in buying a photo booth, I have a link for mine in the description as well. If you like this video, press the like button, share it with a friend, and thank you for being here, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.